Hello, I am William, and welcome to my channel. This is my first video and I hope you like it. Please subscribe to my channel and enjoy this strange story. Since it was a sunny Friday afternoon, I didn't think much of it at first. It was 5:30 and I had just returned home from work. When I saw that my neighbor's front door was open, I assumed that she was simply unloading something from her car. I went inside my own house and went through my usual after-work routine, going for a run and then making dinner for my wife, Alice, and me. It was only in the evening that I began to suspect something was wrong. I was taking our dog, Bailey, out for her final walk of the day. It was nautical twilight, my favorite time to be outdoors. I've always enjoyed strolling around the block with Bailey in those last, precious moments when there's still enough light to see the horizon. I put Bailey's harness on her as she excitedly hopped around. Then the two of us stepped out into the cool night. After a few seconds, I looked up and noticed that the door to my neighbor's house, the one directly across the street, was still wide open. Also strange was the fact that, despite her car being in the driveway, the house was completely dark, not a single light on inside. I crossed the street. My neighbor is a 20-something named Isabel. She seems like a sweet girl, but we aren't exactly good friends. Sometimes I give her lemons from our tree in exchange for figs, and that's pretty much the extent of our relationship. Still, the sight of that open door made me uneasy. What if she had some kind of medical emergency and was currently unconscious, or worse, on the floor of her entryway? After a few steps up the driveway, the leash in my hand went taut. Looking down, I saw that Bailey had seated herself firmly on the ground, refusing to budge even as I called her name and tugged on the leash. Her ears were pricked up, her eyes fixed on the house like she was waiting for something. Though she wasn't growling, I was unnerved by her alert posture and her refusal to walk any closer to the door. I let my voice close the distance between us and my neighbor's threshold. "Isabel, it's Brian from across the street. Can you hear me?" For a moment, there was only silence. Then, just as I was about to drop Bailey's leash and walk up the steps to the house, there came a voice from the dark. "Hey, Brian," she said, before coughing once and then clearing her throat. "Sorry, I'm in the middle of dinner here. What's up?" I breathed a sigh of relief. "Hey, sorry, I just saw that your front door was open. Wanted to make sure you knew." Strangely, there came another long pause. I knew she was inside the house now, and close enough to the door to hold a conversation with me. "So what was the delay, Isabel?" "Oh, you're so sweet to check in. Yes, I know it's open. It's just been so hot today that I wanted to let the breeze in. I'll close it soon." "Of course. Have a good night, then. You too." With that, I tugged Bailey back down the driveway, and the two of us completed our walk. I returned home, happy that my neighbor was all right, and went to sleep. Saturday was a much-needed lazy day. I woke up at 10, ate the breakfast that Alice made, then spent some time in the backyard with her and Bailey. It was an overcast day, and by 3 p.m. or so, a light rainfall forced us back inside. Alice took a call from her sister, who lives at the edge of our neighborhood, while I went to the living room to throw on some television. Except, before I could get comfortable, I looked out the front window and was surprised to see that Isabel's front door was open again. Open again. I wondered, or was it never shut? I got up close to the window and studied the house across the street. The rain was coming down harder by then, and the thick, grey clouds overhead made it seem like nighttime. Despite this, there wasn't a single light on inside of Isabel's house. It was so dark inside that the entrance to her house seemed less like a door and more like a black, painted rectangle on the exterior wall. I turned to look at Bailey, who was laying on a nearby couch, and saw that she was also looking out the window. Ears pressed against her head, she glanced at me briefly, then refocused her attention outside. I couldn't tell if she was simply people watching, or if, somehow, she too could sense something wrong. Just then, Alice walked into the living room. She was no longer on the phone, and she greeted me with a strange, almost nervous smile. "That was an odd conversation," she said, taking a seat next to Bailey. "Everything all right? I dunno. Clara saw a woman peeking into her house a few nights ago." "What? Creepy, right? And she's not the only one. Apparently, there've been a few reports on her side of town, other people experiencing the same thing. Nothing stolen and no one hurt, at least that Clara knows of, but it's still pretty weird. Let's make sure we lock up extra well tonight." My thoughts drifted to my neighbor. I asked my wife what this woman looked like. Like I said, Isabel and I weren't close, but I knew she had recently gone through a difficult breakup with a long-term boyfriend. It was far-fetched to assume a connection between Isabel and the mystery woman, but who knew? Heartbreak makes people do crazy things. Maybe there was some link between the two. Alice hesitated for a minute. "Well," she eventually said, "you know Clara, she's got a real, superstitious way about her. She's always telling stories." "What does that mean?" "It means you've got to take this with a grain of salt." When Alice relayed Clara's description of the woman, I felt a chill run down my spine. Clara said that the woman was tall and gaunt, enough so that she originally mistook her for a man. She said that her skin looked too tight across her face, and that her eyes looked unnaturally deep-set, as though they were too far back in her skull. Apparently, when she saw that Clara had spotted her, she had given Clara a big smile before retreating into the night. Apparently, when she smiled, she had too many teeth. I was silent for a moment, unsure what to make of Clara's morbid sighting. "Love, was Isabel's front door open this morning?" She considered my question as she pet Bailey. "I think it was. If nothing else, I figured I should at least tell Isabel to be careful." I put on my raincoat and headed outside, carefully making my way down the wet driveway. Once I made it to the sidewalk, I heard frantic barking coming from behind me. Turning around, I saw Bailey in the window, her paws resting on the sill, her growls and whimpers rising over the heavy rain. My wife appeared next to her a few seconds later. She attempted, unsuccessfully, to comfort Bailey, giving me a questioning look as she did so. I gave her a shrug in return, then crossed the street. I stopped at the bottom of Isabel's porch steps and listened. Like before, I could hear someone inside, though I couldn't tell exactly what was going on. I heard a deep, wet, ripping sound, like something being torn. Also, like before, I couldn't see a thing inside the house. A voice called out from the dark interior. "Brian." "Hello again," I said, only wondering in retrospect how she could have known it was me. "Sorry to bother you again, but I wanted to tell you something. Would you mind coming out for a minute, Brian?" she repeated, tone almost reprimanding. "This isn't a good time. You always seem to catch me in the middle of a meal." "It won't take long," I tried persuading. When she didn't respond, I climbed up a few steps. "Isabel, there's been some suspicious activity around the neighborhood recently. I know you like to keep the door open for the breeze, but maybe you ought to keep it shut today." "Oh, but I'm so comfortable here on the couch. Why don't you close the door for me?" The couch? Wasn't she in the middle of a meal? Even if she were eating on the couch, her voice sounded so close, like she couldn't have been more than a few feet away from me. Was she hiding behind the door? I climbed up the rest of the steps, trying to recall the inside of her house from the 2 or 3 times I'd been inside. I knew that the room immediately to the left of the entryway was the living room, and most likely where Isabel was supposedly sitting. I also knew that there was a light switch right next to the front door. What the hell, I thought. I'll just go inside for a minute, say hello, and then shut the door for her. It'll give me some peace of mind to actually see her instead of just hearing her voice. I glanced over my shoulder toward my own house. Bailey was still barking her head off, which was unnerving, but the sight of Alice keeping an eye on me gave me some peace of mind. It was just a house, I told myself. Just a normal house with my own neighbor inside of it. Taking a deep breath, I stood at the threshold, shocked at how, despite my closeness, the inside of the house remained pitch black. I thrust a hand inside and it disappeared like I'd dipped it into oil. As I groped around for the light switch, my fingers brushed against something solid, something fleshy. I jerked my hand back, certain that I'd just touched a person. "Isabel?" I asked the darkness, and then, from inches away, came the sound of laughter. The laugh was deep, gravelly, and mocking, and it did not resemble my neighbor's voice in the slightest. Before I could react, I heard the quick pitter-patter of footsteps against wood. It grew quieter and quieter, and I realized that it was the sound of someone running away from me. After a few seconds, I thought I heard a door open and shut in the distance. The back door, perhaps. Again, I stuck my arm inside, and this time I was able to find the light switch. I turned on the light and was relieved when the interior of the house revealed itself to me. A normal entryway with a normal coat rack and a normal shoe rack. No eerie intruders in sight. However, the relief was short-lived, because when I stepped inside the house, I turned to the left, walked into the living room, and was greeted by the sight of my neighbor, or at least what was left of her. She was splayed out atop a couch, her head lolled off the side. Her empty eye sockets and toothless, wide-open mouth looked like 3 holes had been dug into her face. Her face itself was red, not, as I initially thought, because it was covered in blood, but because it was missing its skin. She had been flayed, only her face, but her arms and the top part of her torso. It looked like someone had been methodically working their way down her body until I had interrupted them. Paralyzed by fear and confusion, I stood in place. I waited to wake up from a nightmare. I waited for Isabel to walk in from an adjoining room and tell me that I was looking at a Halloween prop. I waited for a dangerously long time, and then I staggered out into the rain. When I returned home, I immediately called the police, though I had trouble putting what I'd seen into words. They arrived quickly, took my and Alice's statements, and then went across the street to investigate. It's been days now. They haven't told me anything, despite my repeated calls to the station. I can't get answers, can't sleep, can't eat. I just keep replaying the discovery over and over in my mind's eye. The voice, the feeling of brushing against the body in the dark, and of course, the sight of that poor girl's mangled corpse. I have too many questions to count, but 3 rise above the rest. Who the hell was I talking to? How did they sound so perfectly like my neighbor? And why is it that every night since I found the body, Bailey hasn't stopped sitting by the front door and growling? Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, and share the video. See you in the next one.